today? Good to hear. So, I have a confession to make. I am a purist. I drink my coffee black, I take pictures unfiltered, and I prefer my guitar unplugged. It's not caffeine that wakes me up in the morning, but the smooth, bold taste of black coffee. Whenever I add milk or sugar, it takes away that rich taste. Similarly, when I add distortion to my guitar, it loses something. It doesn't sound as dynamic, as sonically vivid. A few years ago, I went to a concert from the indie rock band The National, and though I was pumped for the main act, my favorite part was actually the opening act, an artist I did not previously know, Owen Pallett. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Owen Pallett's work, he's known for his kind of modern one-man band act, in which he utilizes only his violin and a loop station to create an orchestral atmosphere of repeated loops and instruments. After seeing him, I was intrigued and inspired. I went home and looked up similar artists, and I found people like Andrew Bird, Kishi Bashi, Reggie Watts, and the Tune Yards. And as you can see, I eventually decided to try it for myself. So, you might be thinking, this isn't special. Every musician does this, right? When they go to a studio and record an album, they play different instruments in separate tracks, and then combine and edit them into a song in the end. But I think looping's different. There's something magical about it. Something magical in the autonomy, the susceptibility to error, the all-in-the-momentness of it all. Normally, you hear a song as a composite, all the instruments playing at once. But when you hear loop music, you hear it built from the foundations up to all the flourishes and embellishments. You become intimately perceptive to all the pieces and individual components. But you also pour a drop of milk into the coffee. So, on that note, I'd like to demonstrate a way through which loop music can synthesize age-old musical techniques with contemporary styles. Back in the 1600s, Johann Sebastian Bach was one of the greatest innovators, composers, and musicians of all time. And one of his most famous ideas was counterpoint. You can take an entire course on counterpoint here at Brown, but the basic gist that I'll give you is that one musician plays a melody one way, and then simultaneously, another musician plays that same melody, but backwards. So it all makes sense as I demonstrate it. So first comes the point. And then comes the counterpoint. And so I can continue and improvise over it and add more and more loops and layers, but you get the point. There's a fine line between acoustic and electronic music, and many musicians have adamantly argued over where to draw this line. In the 1930s, Teddy Wilson was a famous jazz pianist who played with Benny Goodman's big band, and during that era, Big bands have to play in large concert halls, and they have to project their sounds back to be heard. Now, Teddy Wilson, however, used a microphone, and whereas most of his contemporary pianists were known for this dramatic, loud sound, he was known in history for playing softly and delicately. Bing Crosby, another 1930s musician whose style depended on the microphone, was the first person really known for crooning. And like these big bands, other singers of that time had to zealously belt out their lyrics to be heard. And music critics found them to sound very inauthentic. They were too showy. But Bing Crosby, despite his reliance on the microphone, was known as sounding the most authentic. Could we consider the microphone to be the first significant step towards the advent of electronic music? Also, does it sprinkle a little sugar in your morning java? When the piano was first invented, harpsichordists had uproar. They argued that this invention would diminish the virtuosity of fellow keyboardists. Whenever a revolution in music technology occurs, we have to question the potential obsoleteness of our former instruments. A saxophonist could spend his entire life tweaking and perfecting sounds until he gets it just right. At the same time, however, an electronic musician could spend a few minutes tweaking the knobs on her MPC to get the desired tone. The saxophonist will likely scoff at the simplicity, but the electronic musician's immediate response is, well, if it's easier, then why not? The purpose of any machine is to make some facet of life more convenient. But do these tools actually make us more productive? Or is it the older, more arduous process that makes us creative? When I played bassoon, my teacher shared with me the maxim, play the bassoon, but don't let it play you. So, on that note, I'd like to give another demonstration of the intricate music theory that can be applied to flute music. So, I'm going to play a phrase on the 3 different notes of a simple major chord. And I'm just going to go into it because you'll get it as it happens. So, I'm going to start on the root. And then I'm going to go to the 3rd. And then to the 5th. And now you see the entire chord is playing the phrase together. And so, as with the other example, I could add more and more loops and layers to it, make it even more interesting, improvise over it. But you see, I couldn't do that without this loop pedal by myself. I think it's important to mark the distinction between produced music, between music production and music creation. I argue that music creation implies the creation of music from natural acoustic instruments, whereas music production implies the use of a pre-recorded processed or synthetic music-making device. A hip-hop producer, for instance, utilizes a music production center, or MPC as it is commonly called, to write beats. You could say that as a barista, he's practically making frappuccinos. Now, I'm hesitant to evaluate electronic and acoustic music in the same way because of this. I often question myself why I make loop music, considering my purest preconceptions. Do these electronic tools actually enrich music, or do they make it less pure? Do they detract from the collaborative elements inherent in creating ensemble music? And most important of all, do they impede music's potential as a medium of expression? meaningful array. In visual art, we employ texture, line, shape, color, and value to construct and reveal beauty in the world. In literature, we group letters and words together to compose universal stories and messages. It is the artist's job, therefore, to assemble his or her ingredients into an innovative and relevant shape. Pick 50 random words and assign your average 10-year-old to write a short story or poem with them. The result will probably be quite mediocre, but give those same 50 words to, say, James Joyce, a masterful artist of language, and it'll probably create something wonderful. In writing, there's so much freedom that you can even coin new words in some cases, new options for arrangement. But not all art forms have that same flexibility. Many people are shocked when they discover that all music is comprised of only 12 pitches. That's all we get. And yes, there's an astonishing plethora of timbres and melodies and rhythms through which we can play those 12 notes. But at the end of the day, it's only 12 options. Now, if music is defined as organized sound, then I figure we should wholeheartedly embrace any opportunity we're offered to better organize our 12 options. I sometimes ponder whether either music production or music creation is superior, but I realize that the two are actually incomparable. I love black coffee, but sometimes a little cream doesn't hurt. My loop pedal, though arguably proponent of music production, is not an obstruction of pure invention. It is a marvelous mechanism for creation, but only in the right hands. Thank you.